Welcome to Decades of Horror, the classic era.
You caught me unprepared. I've been cooking over a hot creature all day.
This is episode 184, recorded August 18th, 2024.
Gruesome Magazine.
I am your host, Jeff Mohr. On this podcast, we cover the good, the bad, maybe even the ugly horror films released since the beginning of time through 1969. In each episode, we'll discuss the monsters, spirits, psychos, and villains that have haunted movie-going audiences since the dawn of film history. With me this week are my incredible co-ghosts. First up is Daphne, who is awesome, stupendous, and likable as hell. Daphne, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. It's great to see you guys. Miss Chad and Doc, but it's awesome to have Ralph and Bill here.
Yeah, yes, it is. Well, I'm trying to remember. What's that famous Blackula quote? Are you ill, sir? Are you ill?
Are you ill?
You got a Chad Hunt original behind you.
Got a Chad Hunt right there. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent addition. Also with us is Bill Mulligan from Decades for the 1970s and the 1980s. How are you doing, Bill?
I am doing great. We just added a grandson to our family last night. Just got back from seeing him. He's very tiny, very cool. Everyone's doing well. Mom's doing well. It's great.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Yay.
For all the hard work.
I had nothing to do with it.
Let's hope not. Also joining us tonight is Ralph Miller III, special effects artist from past decades. How you doing, Ralph?
Great. Having a good time. Looking forward to talking to you about a great movie.
Yeah, well, Ralph's been a guest with us a bunch of times. We're working up. It's probably, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so.
Anytime Ralph's a guest, it's usually a good movie.
Yeah. So, and in fact, Bill and Ralph are here for a specific reason, because of their love of Ray Harryhausen and stop motion animation, I believe. Yes. Yep. All right. Decades of Horror and Gruesome Magazine are partnering with Play Now Media on several of their channels. And I just got word today that they had an app to begin with that had some kind of bugs in it that they couldn't find. And they finally have redone it. So retro horror movies of the 70s, 80s, and 90s is now out there and running. And it's got a great lineup. So check that out. 70s and 80s, Decades for 70s and 80s are on there as well. So you can check that out. And Decades of Horror, the classic here, is also on Decades of Horror, or also on classic horror movies, classic sci-fi movies, and Wicked Horror TV. So they've got a great library. I was looking through some stuff today and found some things, like for instance, some classic sci-fi channel has the Monolith Monsters, 4D Man, Not of This Earth, that are all
best.
Two of those are 57, one's 59. And then we have serials like Radar Men from the Moon, 12 chapters from 1952, or even better, The Phantom Creeps, 1939 serial with Lugosi, Dr. Cyclops from 1940. So they cover all the decades. They got lots of ways to group them. So check them out. They're available on all the streaming services. Okay. Spoiler alert. Once again, this movie is, oh no, I can't add, like 67 years old on the fly,
Yes.
I think.
Wow. Older than me. By a bit.
But not as old as me. On this podcast, we start by giving some basic details of the film we're covering, followed by each of our first impressions of the movie, and then we'll move into a general discussion on whatever trips our triggers. And we'll do some taglines if we don't forget for some silly reason. So, all right. The topic, if you pay any attention to the title on which you clicked, you already know, is 20 Million Miles to Earth from
I
1957.
love that you picked that picture.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
That's my Batman connection. I swear it looks like they're sticking their head out of a horizontal wall. I'm sure they're not. But anyway,
She's in the movie for half a second, but she makes
Yeah.
the most of it.
And that's my favorite shot, that angle from down below with all the heads sticking out. Yeah, that's hilarious.
All right. 1957. Directed by Nathan Juron.
Creighton.
Written by Robert Creighton Williams. Credited as Bob Williams. And Christopher Knopf. Story by Charlotte Knight and Ray Harryhausen. The cast includes William Hopper, Joan Taylor, Frank Puglia, John Zaremba, Thomas Brown Henry, Bart Braverman, Tito Vuolo, Jan Arvan, and Arthur Space. Production company is a Morningside production, distributed by Columbia Pictures. Filming locations in Los Angeles and Rome. Filming dates, I didn't put that up there, but I had read that they did some location shooting in Rome in September, and then they moved to LA. Release date, June of 1957. Apparently there wasn't a hard release date. Don't have any information on the budget. The box office was $2.4 million. The synopsis is the first U.S. spaceship to Venus crash lands off the coast of Sicily on its return trip. A dangerous lizard-like creature comes with it and quickly grows gigantic.
Yep.
He's gigantic. All right. Well, first impressions first. And this is my pick, so I'm going to go first, but I'm not going to say very much other than something I've already said a million times. When I used to come home from school, there was a movie on weekdays at 4:00, and they would have different subject weeks. And one of them was sci-fi week, and one was horror week. And my favorite movies from that time period were movies that showed on that TV show. And this is the last one that we haven't done. The other ones are It Came from Outer Space, Incredible Shrinking Man, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and The Black Scorpion. And maybe also Quatermass in the Pit, which was called something else. What was that, 5 million years to Earth or something like that?
Yes.
5 million miles through. But this is the last one. And these are movies that, as I have found out now, they hold up as far as I'm concerned. So this is, I think, a great movie. And I also think, you guys can argue with me about it, but I think it's maybe the best Harryhausen stop motion animation, at least for me. And I have discovered that I'm much more enamored of the science fiction stuff than I am of the more fantasy related stuff, like Sinbad and Clash of the Titans and that stuff. Doesn't trip my trigger near as much as these old science fiction movies. Okay, well, I'm going to go with Daphne next, if that's okay. She could give her opinion before the experts come on.
This was actually the first time I've seen it, and I really enjoyed it. I've watched it a few times. I really liked the stop motion animation too. I thought there was a lot of, I don't know, heart to it, and that came across to me. I felt so bad for the Venus guy, and I loved the animation also around like the elephants and stuff when they were fighting. I thought those were really great. So that was all a lot of fun. The story was fun. It had lots of kind of wacky bits in it. Paul Drake from Prairie Mason was in there, so that was fun. And yeah, there was some good lines. So I'm really glad I saw it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, let's go with Ralph Miller next, our more guest of a guest than Bill, I guess.
Okay. Yes. Well, I did not see this on TV when I was a kid. For some reason, it was never playing in the Chicago area at that time. And so I probably first saw it when I was in my 20s, renting it from a video store. and it's a spectacular film. I absolutely love it. It was one of many of these Harryhausen films that I'd only seen pictures of. When I finally got to see it, I was very excited, and I just love this movie.
Very cool.
Alrighty. Bill Mulligan, how about you? When did you first see this?
I saw this on TV. It was in pretty heavy rotation in upstate New York. Channel 5, Channel 9, and Channel 11 were the indie stations, and they seemed to be in an arms race on who could show the most old movies. And I know everyone thinks their childhood was the perfect time to be alive, but I got to say, it was a great time because TV was not infomercials and all this other stuff. We only got maximum 6 or 7 channels, but there was always a movie. This may have been one of the either this or Earth versus the Flying Saucers was probably the first Harryhausen movie I saw. And I don't know that when I first saw it, I knew who he was, but I quickly found out. That was sort of my mission. Once King Kong, Black Scorpion, and the early black and white Harryhausen films were the ones that got me like, who is responsible for this? And I quickly found out. And I don't know that I would consider it his. The thing about Harryhausen is he was so good at complicated setups. The skeletons, trying to keep track of how many articulations you've got going on in one scene, the roping Guanji, all of these amazing sword fights and just craziness. And this one doesn't really have that. And so he was able to focus just on the animation, the creature animation. And I will say this is some of the smoothest and moodiest and just well conceived of all of his creations. I think the Ymir is a great creature. It doesn't have a super expressive face, and yet we get all those emotions from it. Harryhausen was really a master of, the faces could usually open their mouths and close their mouths and move their eyes. And that's the sum total of what he had to work with. And yet this creature, especially, you have a lot of sympathy for him. And he's able to get that, when he's angry, he's a little fearful, but of course he has good reason. This is maybe the most sympathetic of all the creatures. This and I guess Trog are just some of the most sympathetic monsters that you have. At no point are you not aware that he's just an animal, a stranger in a strange land, and everyone is picking on him. Small wonder he goes gets a little antsy. So this is just a great example of Monster on the Loose, probably definitely in the top 5 Monster on the Loose movies. If we put aside King Kong, because you can't have that, but this is great, absolutely fantastic, and it does hold up. It's a lot of fun.
It is. I think that's probably a better description of what I said in terms of the smoothest. I think I totally bought it the whole way. All right. Well, now is the time. When we do taglines for Chad. As played by Bill Mulligan.
Unlike Chad, I'm not going to groan about doing these because this is great. Space Nightmares.
Okay.
Monster from outer space runs wild. These all sound like what the headlines of the newspapers would be spinning,
Yes.
Yes.
Greatest monster since King Kong ravishes the earth. Sexy.
I might say ravages, but ravishes, that sounds kind of spicy.
All the world feared the monster from outer space. I'm sensing a theme here. Thousands flee in terror before the death-dealing monster from outer space. They're ramping up here. It's before he was just a monster from outer space. Now he's a death-dealing. And what's he doing? Space monster runs amok on Earth.
Running amok, and probably right along with running amok is wreaking havoc. Although
wreaking havoc as he deals death running amok. Monster of all space monsters.
Okay, well, that's a little redundant.
The other monsters are afraid of him. Is that? I don't know.
A satellite soared into space and returned with a cargo of terror. Yes, a death-dealing monster running amok. He's the monster of all monsters, they say. Out of space creature invades the Earth. Well, there you go.
Okay. Well,
Wow.
that one made me think that must have been before the phrase outer space came into common usage. He's out of space. Not
He's out of
it's
space.
from outer
It
space.
sounds like there's like a crowded housing problem on Venus or something.
Yeah. Well, if he kept on growing,
He has
we would
no
all
space.
be out of space. It's like, when's this going to stop?
That's a good one. He's out of space, so he's running loose in the streets, looking for a new flat.
Got to
All right,
expand.
and that's been taglines with Chad.
Chad's our hero, cool and rad. With him reading taglines, they can't be that bad.
Ooh, was that the special stereo mix?
Oh my!
I have no idea. That was coming through
Nice.
somebody's. I don't know, but
I
it's
think-
nice. I
Yeah,
didn't put a reverb on it or anything.
Oh, dear.
that was the crystal.
It said,
Cleveland
I could
duo.
either make you freeze or I could screw up your sound. All right. Well, let's get started here with some stuff. And Bill has given us
a gazillion.
a gazillion images to look at that are all worth looking at. And there's the outer space creature who,
Has no head.
yeah, and you did a good job finding the ones because somewhere I was reading or listening to an interview and they were saying most of the posters for this don't show the full creature. The one on the bottom does, but that is to me, I don't like that color.
No,
No. Mm-mm.
That
I-
aqua green kind of thing.
I'm just sort of puzzled by this. Like, it's a bit. His head is a big reveal. It's just
I don't.
a monster like the rest of them. I mean, I think.
Yeah,
there's
I
some
don't
other ones.
understand.
I don't know if you have them or not, but there's some other ones that have them that have like an arm and a leg coming out from the side.
Yeah, I've got a
Like,
couple of those too.
So, but I like the colors.
If you want to see the rest of them, you got to buy a ticket.
the top one.
Okay.
All right, what do we have here? Oh, 20 million miles.
That's
That
the whole
one, I
monster,
like
but
that.
I'm not sure it's the right monster. That doesn't really. I don't know. I think I was
Doesn't
on a
look quite
subway
right.
with that guy.
I like it though.
It is cool.
Joan Taylor is suitably
Mhm.
frightened.
That's a classic 50s poster there. You
If
can
the-
put any monster you want behind her.
Yeah, if the monster was just accurate, it would be awesome. But
Yeah.
not to mention the fact that it's like 3 times taller than the pillars at the
Well,
Coliseum.
yeah.
Just a little bit bigger, but hey,
If he'd lived for another week, he would have been that big.
that's true. That's a point. This thing was like 3 days old, right? Or 4 days old
Yeah.
or something. I mean,
Mhm.
it was
Baby, he's just a baby.
a baby. He didn't know what was going on. Poor thing. All right. What do we got here? I'm going to say French. La Escapadas de la Planeta.
I do like this. It looks like the cover of like a pulp magazine.
It does. I wonder what Grody
Hmm.
filming means.
Hmm. He's also got, and this is the first, I think this is the first movie where Harryhausen started his, and I love it, the kind of cliche of the monsters that move with their elbows kind of behind them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Which is just a great look. And people are like, well, that's weird that the Cyclops and all this, but it looks so much cooler than just them swinging their arms back and forth. And
It does. It looks like they're it looks more aggressive.
yeah, like they're ready to pounce,
Yeah,
get too close.
Oh, I was looking that up because I was thinking that looked Dutch to me, but it could be a Dutch or a Belgian
Well,
poster.
I think I was thinking it was one of those dual language ones because
Mhm.
there was a bottom
Mhm.
strip.
Because Grote Filmen is that just looks like big films.
Yeah,
large, yeah.
Right. So I'll go through the AKAs here.
Okay.
The working title was The Giant Emer.
Mhm.
The Beast from Space was another alternate title. Then the French one, Les Rescapés. Yeah, I don't know who else. Anybody can pronounce that? Venus. Survivors of the Planet Venus. I have a Dutch one, but it's not the same as this. It's Uret fra Verdensströmmet, the monster from outer space. Then I just love these. Die Bestie aus dem weiten Raum. The Beast from Outer Space. And let's see. Dinosaurier betroen Ram. Dinosaurs threaten Rome.
Love it.
A couple of Italian ones. A 30 milioni di chilometri dalla Terra. 30 million kilometers from Earth. Or La Bestia de Otra Planeta, the beast from another planet. So I didn't have that one on the bottom line, planet, but it's obviously probably a monster from Planet Venus or something along those lines.
The refugees from Planet Venus.
Ah, there you go. How do you say it?
Ik weet het niet. That means I don't know. De vluchtelingen. I'm sure that's wrong. Van Planet. I don't know.
How many languages do you speak?
I don't speak any well, including English.
Including English. That's funny.
That's my line.
Les rescapés de la planète Venus.
There we go.
There you go.
We knew we were waiting for that.
J'ai retenu. Okay.
All right. Well, that's that one. And then I was reeling off all these other ones. And yeah, I do. I kind of like that one. Sometimes the women are always cowering.
Oh, they've tripped over their high heels.
Yes.
Like their pose.
Damsels in distress.
And this one is is that Italian?
Yeah, it looks like it.
In megascope.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Italian.
I like
30
it.
kilometers, 30 million kilometers from Earth.
I like how these movies that have totally normal aspect ratios still have the nerve to come up with megascope, technorama.
Well, and what did we see? The original. What was the original thing they were gonna? The process they were going to call Harryhausen for this one was electrolysis.
Yes, electrolytic dynamation.
Oh wow!
Oh,
Yeah, you know the origin of the word dynamation?
Dynamic animation.
Sort of. Actually,
think.
the producer Charles Schneer had a Buick that on the steering wheel said Dynaflow.
Oh yeah,
And he kind of liked the sound of Dynaflow, and so DYNA from Dynaflow was incorporated into the word dynamation
Nice.
for Harryhausen's techniques.
Well, and since you brought Schneer up, this is the first of his production company, Morningside. This first production.
And Schneer doesn't get enough credit, but the reason why Ray Harryhausen had the career he did and Willis O'Brien had the career he did is that Willis O'Brien never found his Schneer. He never found that one producer that believed in him and could do all the boring work of getting the production and getting the money and making it happen. And so Willis O'Brien, after Mighty Joe Young, a few projects here and there, Black Scorpion, Giant Behemoth, but for the most part, it was just one brilliantly unrealized project after another, a real loss and a real shame for someone who did so much. But Schneer deserves a lot of credit for being the reason we have Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with It Came From Beneath the Sea. That was their first collaboration. Moving on to Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, and then this one. Yeah. Schneer was essential, producing all his films from It Came From Beneath the Sea forward, aside from work on Animal World, I suppose.
Yeah.
So this was in 2007 to coincide with the 50th anniversary celebration. They put out this 4-issue comic series created by Scott Davis and Alex Garcia. 20 million miles, set 50 years after the events of the film. The crewed mission to Venus and the attack on Rome. Let's see.
Hey, and it fixed. I was going to say it fixed the one thing that this movie was missing, which is a beautiful, shapely woman in a tight-fitting costume. That would 100% get you killed in less than a millisecond on Venus.
Probably, but no cleavage. Right? Still no cleavage. All right, and I was trying to think of what else he said here. And at 50 years, it had pretty much been dismissed as a hoax. The whole Emer thing. So anyway, and a preview of that first issue is on that 50-year anniversary Blu-ray. Ralph, you want to hold that up?
Oh, sure.
You had that there.
You're going to want this one, kids. Of course, I have a green screen on, so it's a little odd. But
it looks cool, though.
Yeah, that's actually really cool.
It's a nice one. It's a nice one. I was actually able to find one of those.
Lots of bonus features on this one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you can. It has the colorized version. That was the other thing that was part of the deal. Yeah. Which I'm just. It's a very good colorization, but I just can't do it. I just can't.
It's a weird thing because Harryhausen signed off on it and said it was always meant to be in color, and I get all that. But to me, the colorized version, while it's one of the better colorized black and white movies that I've seen them do, as opposed to like the abomination that was Casablanca, it makes for one thing, it makes the stop motion look much phonier and cheap because the creature now is just sort of a solid kind of leprechaun green. It doesn't have any of the nuances that it probably would have had if it had been actually painted that way. And it just looks... It doesn't look as real as it does in black and white. The black and white is so good. I have no reason to change it.
Right. Right.
There are a lot of young people now who will simply not watch anything if it's in black and white. And Ray, listening to his commentary, he seemed to be really tickled that this could be done. And initially, Charles Schneer wanted this to be in color, but Harryhausen was feeling this could be a dangerous thing to do. It would cost more money, of course.
Right.
And the black and white stock that they'd just gotten to work with on this film was a superb black and white stock, so that you could even go a generation or two from the original. So like your rear projection screen material just looks flawless. And to jump into color, now you've got all kinds of issues.
Right.
So with his black and white films, he could actually do a camera test, shoot some frames and quickly develop it right there in the studio, and then very soon see the results and see if the lighting was good, if everything, contrast looks correct, if the split screen showed that, all these things that they could just instantly tell very quickly because they could process it right there in the studio. Whereas once you go to color, now it's overnight before you see what the setup's going to look like.
Right.
And he would always do tests of his shots before he could actually perform the animation, because otherwise you could animate the whole shot and then the next day you find out something's screwed up and it's not going to look good. And he rarely did a second take on anything. He did it sometimes, but very rare.
I think he said in that somewhere on that Blu-ray, Ralph, that it was about 7 to 8 months of
animation
on the animation.
That's right. That's right. And he was closely involved in the colorization process, as he was with Earth versus the Flying Saucer. It came from beneath the sea as well.
The same company did it, right?
Yes. He called out the colors. He told them, "This is what I want." He wasn't like there in the studio. It was done long distance, but he would give all his notes, and then they'd send some pictures or some footage back to him for him to review. So he was intimately involved. It's not like he just signed a paper and they went with it. He was very involved. Yeah. He also was involved in colorization of a movie called She,
Oh, wow.
Yes.
that he quite enjoyed when he was younger.
There are films like that where you watch something like She, or one of my favorites, Madam Satan, and you're like, oh, why was this not in color? Yeah, and one really good thing about when they do colorize this, at least when this company does, they go out and find the cleanest print, the black and white print that they can find, and that's usually on the DVD too. So if you're one of those, snobs like me that wants to see and it's original, you're going to get that, and you're going to get that in probably the best version that you've ever had.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
really
worth
looks great.
Yeah.
Did Harryhausen do many commentaries?
Yes, he actually did. He did a number of commentaries.
Oh, okay.
Like I think on the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad anniversary video, I think you get commentaries
Okay,
there.
cool.
There's this there's this nonprofit, the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, and they keep his entire collection intact, and they put on exhibitions from time to time, and they've been involved in interviewing Harryhausen for all of his movies, and maybe they haven't all made it onto a video that you can get at home yet, but I think we can look forward to those that don't have it. Most likely, many of them will end up with if not a commentary, at least a question and answer, interview situation.
That's awesome.
Thankfully, we had Harryhausen for a good long time, and he was sharp up to the end. God bless him. He was well spoken and good guy.
Here, one other thing. There's an ad.
There's his face.
Yeah, they so
somehow or another
20 million miles to Earth
day,
and the 27th day. I guess, well, they both have numbers in the title, so they belong together. The thinking that went into double features really eludes me so many times.
Well, Reign of Terror from Outer Space. Maybe it's probably
I guess. Yeah.
They should have double billed it with 5 million years to Earth to really confuse people.
Oh God, I can never keep those.
That would have been awesome.
I just want to say Valerie French is a lot easier on the eyes than the Emer, but
and then there's this, which I was totally unaware of, is a novelization by Henry Slezar, who I knew best as a writer for the mystery pulp digest magazines like Ellery Queen, Alfred Hitchcock, Black Mask, I think. So
very cool.
That's cool.
And that's actually a pretty good cover too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into this. Is directed, and this is very interesting, I think. Directed by Nathan Juran.
Yeah.
Who gave us a lot of good stuff.
Look at all that. Whoa.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Hey, they're all fun.
The brain.
What you're saying bad is good. Brain from Planet Arrows is bad. Well,
First Man on the Moon. I like that.
Yeah. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman is bad but enjoyable. Brain is just ugly, but I love it too. I mean,
well, you get to see John Agar gets a juicy part in that one.
Yeah. The only one that's disappointing is actually for me is Giant Mantis, because I just expected more. Mantis are so scary. The thought of a giant mantis going around, but there's just not enough giant mantis action in that movie.
That's one of those ones that Jerry Chandler said he has in a kind of far too much unexplainable affection for that movie.
Yeah.
and I'm like, I watch it and it's like, it feels like 25% of the movie is this static looking mantis flying.
But it's that unexplainable affection. We all have them.
We see him at the right time. And then there's Jack the Giant Killer, which is just a baffling movie. It's Harryhausen without Harryhausen, and it shows you what happens if you don't have Harryhausen, although they had some good effects technicians working on it.
Right.
And
early Jim Danforth effort in terms of the animation, but he had nothing to do with the models, which
the models were
unfortunately
very subpar,
very poorly detailed.
Yeah, but then you got to watch out, because apparently at some point in the 60s they turned it into a musical. They took a movie that was not a musical and turned it into a musical. And it's like, well, how are you going to get these characters to look like they're singing? They loop it so that a character says something and then la la la, and you're like, oh wow.
Well, that's not the best version to watch.
No. No.
I love musicals, but I draw the line somewhere.
I was also crushed to discover, I heard the name and it's like, wow, that sounds really cool. I really thought that Jack was a giant who killed people. And then I found out it was actually a guy named Jack who killed giants. Like, well, that's not nearly as cool.
You weren't familiar with Jack and the Beanstalk?
Yeah, but I didn't know. Listen,
didn't connect it.
You know what? I was like probably only a couple of years ago old when I discovered that Alien Nation, the movie, is a take on the word alienation, which I think was obvious to every other primate on the face of the earth. So it's
I'm a little slow on the uptake with things like that too, Bill. It's not just you.
Well, Nathan Duran is kind of an interesting guy. He was in the OSS in World War II.
Oh.
And was an art director starting in 1937, and in fact won an Oscar for art direction in How Green Was My Valley.
Oh.
And I can't remember if Harryhausen was saying it or if it was something I read, but they said they thought that's why he and Harryhausen got along so well, because he understood the art direction and how difficult it was, how he had to stage all these shots. And in fact, when you think about it, I guess it doesn't sound like he even went to Italy, but Harryhausen had to stage everything out. So he had to go get cover shots in Italy that were later just rear projections, right? And the only actor, I think, that actually went to Italy was William Hopper.
Yep.
Nobody else went.
Yeah, they used doubles for all the other shots.
For long shots and stuff,
Duran was smart enough to know who's buttering this bread here.
Well, let's see. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, right, because you see William Hopper on the Coliseum, and everybody else is just an extra.
They're off. Yeah, they're all Italian soldiers.
Just reacting,
off to the other people drive up in the car off to the side, and then you see him run off screen, and then he's over there talking to him. You don't see them. Anyway,
there's a famous story. I don't know which movie it was. Might have been Guanji or something, where the director, the nominal director, was asking, "Who is this elderly British guy who's like calling the shots here?" And they're like, "That's Ray Harryhausen. He cannot be replaced." And I think Duran knew that, he was making a Ray Harryhausen movie. This is a Ray Harryhausen joint, and he was smart enough to get out of the way. And he's a competent director. He makes it easy for Ray to do his stuff.
Yeah,
and I love First Man in the Moon. I love Seven Dwarfs in Bed. He did.
Yeah, so we got that art direction. That I think I said this. How Green Was My Valley, 1941. But he also was art director for Bend of the River, 1952, which is a pretty well-known Western. Cave of Outlaws, which was directed by William Castle. And Harvey.
Oh, okay.
Jimmy Stewart giant rabbit thing, and Winchester 73, which was also a Jimmy Stewart movie about a famous rifle. All these were around 1950, early 50s. But what I wanted to talk about, as weird as I just saw this, I've been working my way through the Scream Factory Universal volumes. When they put those 6 volumes that had 4 movies apiece in it. The Black Castle from 1952 is directed by Nathan Duran and has Richard Green, Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., Michael Pate, who was the vampire in I can never remember the title. It's like The Undead Curse or something. The Western vampire movie.
Yeah.
Curse of the Undead, maybe.
Yes, there you go. Curse of the Undead. Yep. And John Hoyt, who is one of those character actors I love.
Yeah. Hey, is that the one where they kill the vampire by carving a cross on a bullet and then shooting him with it?
Curse of the Undead is, yes.
Yeah. I that's the kind of thinking outside the box that I really approve of. There's so many ways to kill those things.
Horror movie. There's something.
Hey, try it. It just might work.
Absolutely.
There were some good shots in that too.
Rub some garlic on it too.
He also was the writer for Dr. Blood's Coffin. When he got into TV, he did 5 episodes of My Friend Flicka, which for some reason turns up all the time on these classic era movies. People are playing parts in that. He also did 13 episodes of Lost in Space.
There we go.
Ooh.
29 episodes of Daniel Boone.
Kind of a journeyman director.
The Boy Who Cried Wolf was a movie in 1973.
Yeah, it's not good.
So anyway, but lots of other stuff in there that I'm familiar with, but no one else.
I feel like The Boy Who Cried Wolf might have had the Kerwin
Matthews.
The guy who played Sinbad. He might have been in that. So I mean, he's a director who doesn't get a whole lot of credit, considering that he's made all these movies are classics of one kind or another. I may make fun of The Brain from Planet Arrows, but it's 11 times better than it has any reason to be. It's solidly entertaining. It's quick, doesn't overstay its welcome. And I think if most of the horror directors at the time had made it, it would be completely forgettable. He knows how to make movies. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman is in so many ways wretched, and yet when it comes together, I can watch that from beginning to end, and I am not hitting the fast forward button once.
It is so entertaining.
It is so entertaining.
Yeah.
And The Brain for Planet Arrows, it's like, until you actually see that brain, it's a damn good movie.
Yeah.
Then you see the brain, and okay.
But even then, the lighting is moody. Okay, come on, it's a big inflatable balloon, but they do what they can with it. And John Agar has scary black eyes. I mean, it actually gave me a little bit of a nightmare when I was a kid. I look at it now and I'm like, how was I scared of this? But okay.
There's just to double back for a second. There's a couple of movies in that Universal collection from Scream Factory. One of them is a Black Castle that are just barely horror. It's a stretch. It's more horror because it has Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney Jr. People are doing horrific things. But there's another one in there that I can't remember the title, but I thought it was awesome, and it was all about courtyard, royal court intrigue. You know, the king's brother is killing off all the heirs so that he can take over.
Sounds like Richard III.
It sounds a lot like Tower of London.
I think that
sounds like Tower.
Does it have Boris Karloff and Vincent Price in it?
It does.
Well, then it's Tower of London.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff is the headsman. He's the
Oh, it is. That's right. You're absolutely right. Yes. Basil Rathbone is the bad.
Yes, Basil Rathbone is a bad guy. He's bad.
Boris Karloff is the execution.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Kills off the little kid. That's an amazing movie, and that's a movie where I love Vincent Price's performance because he's not playing Vincent Price.
Right.
He's actually acting a different character. You know, I love that because he's good. He's really good. But towards the end, it kind of feels like he's just playing the same guy all the time.
I feel like they hired him. It's like, well, we wrote a Vincent Price character, and we came to you, Vincent Price.
Yeah, but that's how a lot of movie stars are. I mean, he was. You could say he was typecast. They see what he did. He does it really well. People love him that way. It's, typecasting is a double-edged sword, but he had a time of his life. He was living large. It was good.
I didn't want to. I mean, it's a great legacy.
Yeah.
Another one of his great roles is God, this is weird to be talking about this, but it's sort of a film noir where he is an actor, a famous actor in Swashbucklers, and it's like this tropical resort or something, and there's some shenanigans going on, and he's all excited because he wants to actually get into real action, not just be a swashbuckling. He's hilarious.
Is that Dragonwyck?
No, it is not. And I can't even think of who the star is either. Like Robert Mitchum.
Sounds cool.
Or
I'd like to
Cornell
see
Wilde.
Well, it's a great recommendation anyway. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, without a title. Yeah. I like that great.
We'll all watch that tonight.
I'll think of it. All right. So Nathan Juran. Yeah.
There we go. Good
so
stuff.
I guess he just directed the U.S. part, but I don't know. I think when it's a Harryhausen film, isn't it pretty much everything that's got stop motion in it? The shot angles and everything and the actors' motions and positions are all laid out ahead of time.
Yeah, it's pretty much Ray Harryhausen's gig there.
Yeah.
and that's got to be tightly directed too. You can't just say, hit your marks or whatever. It's got to be pretty precise because he's the one who's going to have to go in there and make sure when a guy's stabbing a pitchfork that it's going to the right place. And
And in a film like this, as with King Kong, there are many scenes where the creature is a rear projection with the live actors in front of it, which means all that stop motion has to be done before they get to shooting that scene. Whereas a lot of the work is done afterwards in post-production. But for a movie like this, there are a lot of scenes where the creature is, incorporated by being a rear projection behind the actors. So he has to lay things out and schedule things out so that he's got that shot locked in
like
at that time.
When William Hopper is trying to prod him and get into that cage, there's nothing there when he's doing it.
No.
So
silly.
all those two things are worked out in Harryhausen's mind, done independently and then matched together.
I wonder, I've never seen anyone ask him, but I wonder if Harryhausen ever even thought about just directing a movie with humans.
What?
Just
what's the point of that? Where's the fun in that?
I mean, I'm glad he didn't, because that would be time spent away from doing what he was so good at. But
anybody could do that, Bill.
Here's the humor.
This center picture, is that Duran?
No, that's Forrest J. Ackerman.
Yeah,
that's Forrest Ackerman.
They were childhood friends along with Ray Bradbury.
Yeah, what
in high school?
Can you imagine in high school these three guys?
And Harryhausen's first movie as the lead animator was Beast from 10,000 Fathoms. That was from a story by Bradbury.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, based on the foghorn that was in the Saturday Evening Post. Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy thing. These three guys, and I don't know why this has only just now occurred to me. I mean, these three guys had such an influence on my childhood. Ray Harryhausen, one of my heroes. Ray Bradbury was the first science fiction writer I wrote, because my dad loved his short stories, and we had Golden Apples of the Sun and The Martian Chronicles. We had all those books, and I read them. Those were the first science fiction books I read, which I've said before is a problem, because when you start, I love science fiction. Well, if you start with Ray Bradbury, there's really only one direction to go, unless you start reading other science fiction like this isn't as good as Ray Bradbury. Well, a few people were. And of course, Forey Ackerman did Famous Monsters of Filmland, which took that spark that these guys had done and just flamed it and opened me up to a world of all the fantasy stuff out there. These three guys, man, for a monster kid growing up in the 60s.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That was
pretty
it.
Great.
Yeah, they rocked their world.
Yeah.
Yeah, Forey's Famous Monsters of Filmland is where all of us found out about Ray Harryhausen and Willis O'Brien. We loved these movies, and we had no idea. Oh, it's these couple of people who did almost all of our favorite movies. That's crazy.
So here's the original
concept.
Yeah.
Thank God he went in a different
Cyclopean
direction.
satyr. Well, originally it was going to be called the Emer, and it was about this Norse mythological beast or something. He went through quite a lot of changes over the time.
I wish Chad was here, because I wanted for him to be able to tell his friend, because on this Blu-ray, every single person and every single interview all pronounce it the Emir, including Ray Harryhausen. And Chad said he had a friend that when he said Emir, said, "What did you say? It's pronounced Weimer."
Weimer?
Wrong.
Yes.
Well, he might pronounce it that way, but nobody else does.
We don't. And it could be Chad was just joking, and I didn't.
No. It's amazing what hill people die on. I've had friends who got almost into fist fights because they insisted that it was Magneto, not Magneto. It's Magneto. It's like there's no such thing as a magnet. I'm like, dude, Magneto sounds stupid. No one is going to be afraid of a guy who calls himself Magneto. These are the things we used to argue about. This is why I had no girlfriends until very late in high school.
Yeah, and it was, I think it might have been Charles Schneer who was like, we can't call it the Emir because it sounds too much like Emir, like, Arab Emirates, that kind of designation, which is not the idea of this movie. So you can see it went through changes. Yeah, and the maquette on the bottom is quite interesting there.
he's scary looking, but I like the fact that the monster is really kind of a gentle soul. If as long as you're not stabbing him in the back with a pitchfork, and I'm much the same.
Yeah.
So
no, the monster is so, like I said, it was just, there's so much heart in the design of the monster and also the way the monster moves.
Yeah.
You have a lot of sympathy or empathy
Yeah,
for
the
him.
body language acting of these
Yeah.
animals is amazing.
Well, he also said, I'm sure Ralph can back me up and correct me where I'm wrong. The breathing, that was something that made. I mean, when I watched this and I was 10 or 11 years old, this was real. I bought every single thing that happened. There's maybe, and not, you got to remember. So watching on a low resolution black and white TV, and the TV screen is probably, I don't know what size they were. Those cabinets, ours was on a swivel, but
the cabinets were big, but the screens were not.
No, 24-inch maybe or something. You know,
Wow, big one.
Well, maybe the wire wasn't that big. So, but then we were sitting like a normal distance away in chairs and stuff.
Oh yeah, you don't want radiation.
Yeah, so there's. I don't remember noticing anything. Now on this one, I noticed with the when the pillars fall down and roll, that looked pretty.
Sometimes that looks a little processed. Like
okay, so you might think that would be a blue screen traveling mat or something, but in that case, it was actually rotoscoped, and it's very hard to get something like that to look good because these pieces are falling, and so there's the blur of motion. And yet you're trying to outline the edge of the piece.
Right.
So when you do so, it cuts it off, and it gives it sort of a choppy stroboscopic look.
It does. Even nowadays with After
and that
Effects,
a line is going to waver a little bit because it's like, well, where exactly is the edge of this when it's a blur?
I've had to do some rotoscoping, and it's like the most tedious.
Yeah, I did a little bit, and it's like, okay, I'm not cut out for this. I wasn't good at it either. So.
Yeah.
Jeff, you were talking about the breathing.
The breathing.
You know, watching it as, I didn't see it as a young person, but watching it now, I thought it was just really cool looking, but it also kind of gave me a much more like a more of a reality of what was happening, because the monster was breathing. But I also really felt more for like the elephant after the fight, and the elephant is breathing. I'm like, he's dying. What are they just saying? They're watching him lay there dying, it just, it gave a lot more, I don't know, feeling or empathy toward, or just feeling and reality kind of what was going on.
Yeah. They're living, breathing.
Made it more gruesome. Things. Yeah.
Yeah. You saw that way back in The Lost World in, Willis O'Brien's film. Harryhausen, it's especially evident in this film when the Emer is in that high-tech room in the lab setting, where he's lying on his back and he's unconscious, but he's breathing. That's how you could tell he's alive. If he didn't have the breathing, it would just look like a statue or something. Yeah. And what he said is he used what he called an Orsatz bag, which is those rubber inflatable rings they put around your arm when you're getting your blood pressure taken. He would take that and he'd pump it up, and then he'd release the air, and that's how he would make it breathe. That would be inside, close to the surface of the skin of the creature.
Okay, so I found the name of the movie, His Kind of Woman.
His Kind of Woman. Okay, I've heard that title.
1951. Now this is interesting. This is it's directed by John Farrow, but Richard Fleischer is uncredited. And remember how we've talked about Richard Fleischer used to come in and fix a lot of people's movies.
Yeah.
And was actually a very accomplished director. But it starred Robert Mitchum, Jane Russell, Vincent Price, Charles McGraw, Raymond Burr. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
This Kind of Woman.
Anyway, all right. Now that I got that out of my obsessive compulsive brain. So it was. Yeah, I thought the breathing was cool. but he said something about it later on. He didn't bother with that. It was too much work and nobody noticed, is what he said.
Yeah, it's
something
going to
like
really
that.
depend on the shot where you notice something
Sure.
like
Right.
that.
Right.
You know. Right.
Well, these are just the black and white Harryhausen films. This one and these three, and then when he went to color, because like you were saying, he went more in the fantasy elements, where fantasy without color is tough to pull off. You know. But I love these black and whites, especially Beast. Beast is such a good movie.
That is amazing. I mean, to think that that was his first solo project, and it was so ambitious, and he did it for next to nothing. But I think what he did is he got equipment out of it. I think he got the projector and camera or something like that, so that he could continue making these films.
Well, I think, Ralph, I thought it was funny how he talked about when he worked that he went to his own studio that was not around the movie making people.
Yeah, not
because then people would leave
not on the Columbia lot or something.
He didn't want people coming in and checking on him and talking to him all the time and getting
that would be disastrous.
Yeah, for that type of work.
And this is why Ray Harryhausen never developed a coke habit or bad marriages. Good for him.
I could never do that work. I'm too my hands are not steady enough. All right, the Beast from 20,000. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, we have covered that, and if I remember right, isn't Lee Van Cleef?
Yes, he's the one who actually shoots down the Beast.
Anyway, all right. So where are we at now? Here's some art,
more pre-production. Hey, Harryhausen was a hell of an artist. He could draw. These are great.
Absolutely.
Well, not only could he draw, but then he could reproduce that in a 3D model. That's
I mean, these scenes are pretty close. Now you can quibble that elephant is way bigger than any actual elephant you're ever going to find. But you know what? I think when I think of elephants, I think of them being 3 times the height of a human being. They are actually not. But they're big enough that they could stomp me into tomato paste. So that's big
I was going to say,
what's the difference?
Yeah.
When you're running from them and you fall down, they're big enough.
Yeah. I did love the squishing and the squashing and the killing that was happening.
Yeah, when the elephant.
You got some trivia about the elephant, Jeff?
Well, I was just going to say not so much about the elephant, but didn't Harryhausen's father make the armatures for these?
Yes, he did. For all the way from when he was doing his fairy tales on his own, these little short films, all the way through Jason and the Argonauts. His father made the armatures for him.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And I know his mom's fur coat provided the fur for one of his first.
His mammoth. His woolly mammoth.
You did remind me of
supportive. That's so awesome that his family supported him and not like, I don't want a son who's playing with dolls. Go out and get a job in the factory,
That would have been a different story.
That reminded me of something else. You mentioned the fairy tales. He described how he wrote up some short description of the movie.
Oh yeah,
for Schneer, and he took it, but then they gave it to Charlotte Knight.
Right. So
fleshed it out.
So
and
he
Charlotte Knight was a woman that wrote a couple of his fairy tale scripts.
Yeah. So he'd continue with her. So he just wrote a treatment that was just like 3 pages or something, not very many pages, and then she wrote a 60-page write-up on the story. And from there, it went to the screenwriters. And of course, as he was writing his story, he also was creating these renderings here that would sell Charles Schneer or whomever on the project.
Oh, God, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
I like the prominent
a lot of people
sternum on the thing, too. I just think that's...
Yeah. It
looks about that added the...
He also I got to love the part that he sets it in Rome because he wanted to go to Rome for a vacation. And it's like, hey, someone's got to, photograph these background prints, and it might as well be me. Like,
I think he said at the last minute he changed it from Chicago on Lake Michigan to.
Originally, the rocket was going to land in Lake Michigan.
Good.
I love it. I love it.
And prior to this one, he was developing an idea for something called the Elementals with these bat-winged humanoid demon figures that roosted in the Eiffel Tower because he wanted to go to Paris.
That would have been so awesome.
I know. I would love to see that,
Yeah.
but at least he got his Emer in Rome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got some actors here too.
Oh
we
yeah,
we could go back to talking about the Emer and that stuff
if we must.
So
yeah.
William Hopper
William Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
of Perry Mason fame,
Yeah.
but
Daphne,
also
were you a
Daphne.
big fan of Perry Mason, Daphne?
I wasn't a huge fan, but I watched a lot of the shows just because of the time that they were on TV, and I enjoyed them. I didn't watch all of them, and I may have read one of the Earl Stanley Gardner, but yeah, it's just stayed in my memory.
That's another show. So there are certain shows that the actors that are in the classic era movies all have been multiple episodes of. So Perry Mason is one, Gunsmoke is one, Bonanza is another one. Batman, not as much because it was only 3 seasons, but it's still, there's a lot of them in Batman. I think it was one of those fun things that people wanted to do. He was in Daphne. This was your pick. The bottom picture,
The Bad Seed.
yeah.
Oh, that was Whitney's, but yeah, I remember.
Oh,
that
was it
one.
Whitney's?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oops. Why do I keep thinking Whitney's? All right. And Bill's favorite movie, The Deadly Mantis. That's not in the pictures, but
Yeah, I used to watch Perry Mason and Hitchcock Presents, and those really creeped me out and scared me a lot more than the monster movies I was so much in love with, because it's like these are real people and they're like killing other people because they want their money. It's like, that's horrible.
I know, it's funny. I think about it in just like last week, I had a conversation with someone at work. I know so many people who love true crime, but they hate horror. And I'm like, I just was like quiet once, and it was just like, but these are real people doing these really horrible things. I don't want to watch that.
I like both, but I have to.
I get it. But
I took Bill's caution to heart. Because if you watch enough true crime, you can start to think everybody's a psychopath.
You don't want to leave the house.
You just don't know it yet.
I thought he was very good in Perry Mason. I watched it a lot. You know, like I said, we didn't get a lot of channels, and they were full of black and white old shows.
Yeah.
And it was well made, and his role was a good one. I mean, Perry Mason, obviously smartest guy in the room. Raymond Burr had a presence, but he wasn't what you would call leading man good looking.
Yeah.
He was more, he actually did a really good job when he was playing a heavy, you know, slightly menacing character. So they needed the pretty boy, and this guy, he fits the role, but he's also smart. Okay, maybe he's the second smartest guy in the room. He's no Perry Mason, but you respect him.
Well, he had street smarts too, I felt like. You know, so yeah.
And Della, the female character, she wasn't just a secretary. She was smart too. You know, a lot of times those were the two that might figure or give Perry that little spark that. And I loved how every show the guilty person would just stand up in the middle and confess things that never happened in real life, ever happened.
I was doing it in my living room. I did it.
I did it, and I'm glad I did it, and I do it again. You know, I'm like, okay,
yeah, they were a real team.
The whole setup is kind of made to have these. I mean, there's a reason why so many people were in it, not just because it was long, but because they had these 4 core characters of the 3 we just talked about, plus William Tallman, the poor district attorney that Perry beats every time. And outside of that, they got to have 4 or 5 people that are suspects, and
one's guilty and the others are suspects, and one dies. And can you imagine being that district attorney and realizing,
I know, it's terrible.
I nearly sent 300 innocent people to the electric chair.
I hadn't thought about it that way. That's funny.
No, I always liked him too. So in here, he's playing a staunch military man. I'm not too thrilled with the. Let's see. Do you have? Let's do Joan Taylor here, who was also in Earth versus Flying Saucers. But that whole thing between them in the hospital irritated me.
That's
I'm like, don't you?
They're meeting cute.
I guess. I mean, I'm like, can't you see this this is a serious matter. You need to let him talk to this guy. Anyway.
I'm not a nurse. I'm a doctor. Almost a doctor. Okay,
Yeah,
almost a doctor.
Look at the woman. I think she's a doctor.
Yeah.
Well, but then he turns around. But that's the other thing. Then later on, she says, I should apologize. Well, he turns out apologizes, but I'm thinking, not until she did first, you know. He's sitting over there lost in his thoughts. He doesn't go over to her and go, hey, I need to talk to you.
Well, much of the friction was because he couldn't tell her where this creature came from.
Right.
It was top secret, understandably.
True.
So it's amazing to me when you consider what it would have taken to get to and from Venus, that they could keep that whole thing top secret.
Right.
You know, who's paying for this? Is that part of the military black box or something? You know, that's a big deal.
Well,
This is the Cold War.
I'm always amazed when we watch some of these and how much access the press has to what's going on in the background. I mean, just come on in and ask all these questions.
Come on. Meanwhile, poor Kolchak has to like put a stethoscope around his neck and pretend to be a doctor.
Just for a second, back to William Hopper. He was Hedda Hopper's son, who was a famous journalist back then. And apparently he was very afraid of acting. He had stage fright really bad. Then in World War II, he became a underwater demolitions guy, which is sort of the service that ended up morphing into the SEALs. And after that, for some reason, he could act without fear.
World War II underwater demolition sounds like the scariest thing on earth.
It sounds like one of the most dangerous jobs.
The technology, it was probably just one step above having a hollow reed in your mouth and, you know, hoping that it's above the water.
He also he had bit parts, but he was in 8 movies with Humphrey Bogart.
Oh.
And I don't know. I've got to go back and watch it now because it's one of my favorites is The Maltese Falcon. It says he's in that, but I can't remember who he is. I assume he's one of the cops that wanders in and out a couple of times. But
you know, he's perfectly fine in this movie. But yeah, I got a feeling they're probably thinking if they hire this guy, they know they're going to get a good review from Hedda Hopper. And there was a time when she had a lot of power. You know, you didn't want to cross her.
She did. And Joan Taylor, her father was a prop man and her mother was a vaudeville singing, dancing star.
Oh, it's in the blood.
They moved to Lake Forest, Illinois, and her father managed a movie theater. So she grew up in the movies.
Cool.
Like going to theaters.
Wow.
She went to Hollywood, joined the Pasadena Playhouse, and Victor Jory got her an interview that resulted in a part in Randolph Scott's Fighting Man of the Plains. In 1949.
Is she still with us?
No.
Oh, too bad.
And even more interesting, I think, is she did 18 episodes of The Rifleman as I think the general store owner or something. You know, and probably a possible love interest for Lucas McCain. But her husband was Leonard Freeman, who was the creator, executive producer of Hawaii Five-0.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
If you want to see more of her, get that video.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's on it.
That's a nice interview. I enjoyed her talk.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what else do we have here? Oh, the little kid. Now, is it just me?
Yes.
There was a bunch of movies I watched in that time period, like around 1960, early 60s, that would take place in Italy. And they all had a little kid who was a genius at making money and escorting people around and getting them anything they wanted and telling them all the stuff they needed to know and was always really funny. Am I the only one that?
No, that sounds like a common trope.
Yeah, that's a trope. Well, here he is.
And it's somewhat similar to the kid in Black Scorpion.
Yes.
And also in Valley of the Guanji, though those are Mexican. Yeah.
Well, but there's some in some rom-coms too that take place in Rome, you know, with I'm picturing Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, but I don't know if that's who's in them or not. But
Oh.
this kid, I did not recognize him
outfit.
at all. I did not know who he was. Brett Braverman. I didn't recognize him until I saw this slide that you made, Bill.
He grew up to be a handsome young man and has continued acting, and good for him. But as a kid, when I was a kid, I hated kid characters. Like I don't know who thought that Robin was going to, become a popular character with little kids. Nobody wanted to be Robin. We wanted to be Batman. Stop. Full stop. But
At least he was
this.
a teenager.
In these movies and in Black Scorpion and in Valley of Guanji, I got to say, as a kid, I did imagine it's like, yeah, if this kid can find a valley full of dinosaurs, maybe I can too. Time to go off in the woods.
Yeah.
Never did find that valley. Sorry,
Yeah, they weren't so egregious as like in Gamera movies or
Oh God,
Godzilla's Revenge.
yeah, Godzilla
Whoa.
versus Megalon. What
What's
was that?
happening, Daphne?
Sorry, that was my cats.
Usually it's Bill.
Well, maybe you should have them apologize.
Oh, this.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll be right back.
Oh,
Oh my!
never should have left that chemistry.
You guys can keep going. I just
Oh,
had to
he
pick
was
something
in,
up off the floor.
He was in Alligator.
Oh,
Yeah, yes, he was.
There we go.
Um,
Great movie.
and I don't know. I'm just scrolling through
And
here.
what is the one on the bottom? I should know this. Was that Spencer for Hire?
Yes.
or-
No, that was Vegas.
Vegas.
Dan Tana. That was his first kind of hit before Spencer, then Spencer King.
And he looks pretty distinguished as an older man. When you have with kid actors, it's always a coin flip. They hit puberty and suddenly become, things. They looked okay as a kid, but then the bones didn't set.
Oh,
right
come
or
on,
something.
Clint Howard. Come on.
Oh, Clint's a legend. Clint's,
I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean.
Yes. Yeah. The Beaver.
Yeah, they grow up and they have just enough of their old looks that it's creepy. But I wouldn't even recognize him at all. Just
No, I didn't. I
No.
should have. I didn't.
That's dark hair.
Just plus, the first time I saw it, Brett Braverman wasn't Brett Braverman.
Right.
So I would have had to recognize him backwards, I guess. That's not happening.
So
yeah,
who
he's
else
got
was
a
in
nice
this,
career.
Jeff?
What's that?
Who else was in this movie, Jeff?
Nobody else. That's
Okay.
it.
Oh no.
That was
There's
it.
one more guy.
Is there?
Yeah, the older
Oh,
son.
yeah. Thomas Henry Brown.
Boy, that
Aha.
face. I've seen that face a million times. And he always looks like this, not happy.
He plays a lot of generals and guys.
Generals,
like that,
cops, people who get invited to, the Addams Family house. He's gruff. He's just resting gruff face.
Oh, is that the brain from Planet Eris on the bottom there?
Yeah. And he's
John
not this,
Agar.
and I have a bad feeling that he was not in any subsequent scenes because John's eyes are getting funny.
He's getting the
not a-
crazy eyes.
They
Yep.
were. They were getting funny.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I looked stuff up on him or not. I didn't really get to him. He had over 200 credits, though, so not surprising that
Wow.
that he's recognizable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was also in Earth versus Flying Saucers.
Mhm. One of those classic, you're that guy in that film with that face. There she is.
Yay.
Hey.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we're talking about the general here.
He's just got that face that these scientists just keep coming to him with more and more problems. Like, what can we do about it? I don't know. It keeps on growing, and we can't kill it, and it escaped. You're like, I'm never going to get that extra star. They're going to bust me back down to private. All I wanted to do was send a rocket ship to Venus so we could steal all their minerals. Was that asking too much?
Doc would have pointed out how he was in Airport,
Ah.
1970. Lots of, you go through the 60s and it's just episode after episode after episode of TV shows.
200 credits is a hell of a resume.
Yeah, he looks so familiar.
If these guys were still alive today, they'd show up at a convention and just
Oh God.
treated like kings. I mean, if you're a fan of any of these shows, here's someone who was on it. You know,
Mhm.
Here's
I'm sure
a
you had
movie
a
I
lot of good
missed.
stories.
He was in a movie called I Passed for White in 1960.
Okay.
Okay.
It wasn't him.
No, because I think he could get away with it pretty easily.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of stuff. It's one of those things. Oh! He was in Screaming Mimi.
Oh,
All right.
The Frederick Brown novel based mystery from 1958.
Screaming Mimi.
It's pretty good.
May have that poster.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry if you guys already talked about it, but I'm looking at all of the stuff he's been in. Bewitched, Green
Mhm.
Acres.
Oh, Thomas Brown.
There
Henry.
you go. Yeah.
Oh, How to Make a Monster also.
Oh, nice.
The thing that couldn't die.
Because again, he's just got that face. You could just see he's going to be very annoyed by some shenanigans that some has caused in the neighborhood, and there's just a
Yeah.
lot of confusion. I don't know what's going on.
And somehow he is supposed to fix everything.
What a great show that was.
We have tons of pictures of the Emir.
Yay!
Yeah, because that's
Finally,
who we really
we're back to
came
the
for.
humor.
That's what.
Enough of these people.
Yeah.
Now, this was another thing that sold me on the movie was this rocket. I
Yeah.
love that. I absolutely love that. And
Rocket.
Yeah.
now is that I don't know the proper terminology, but I assume that was sort of a 3-stage composite of some kind. You could kind of see
Is it?
the line in the water where that's rear projection,
Oh, how is it done?
and then
Well,
there's
this is-
water that they're on
yeah.
water that's you're actually
I
getting
mean,
wave.
the whole dinorama thing is
and
that.
that's a map painting, isn't it? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, dinorama. The cool is that it created kind of a sandwich where you would take this background plate, put your model, in this case, the rocket ship, in there, and using mats, make it look like it's actually in front of part of the background, but in a way that makes it look like it's in the middle. And then you have to add, this had to be the water, the waves and everything had to be superimposed.
Right.
And then in the middle shot, we add on top of all that other work, we also have them in front of, this is these guys with a rear projection there. So there's a lot.
And the bubbles coming up too, and they've got to be positioned right. That was cool too.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that separates Ray Harryhausen from a lot of the cheaper non-Ray Harryhausen ones is they would just not bother with things like bubbles or waves. It's just
Yeah. And he did comment that he should have had more water spray, more foam,
more bubbles and
more
stuff,
bubbles, because I mean, a rocket ship that size crashes into the ocean, it's going to be more than a ripple. But he said, well, we just didn't have.
Well, and that's
budget.
the only thing, when the thing's going down, I would have expected like a swelled wave to be going out, but still. I didn't think that until now, where I was trying to be critical. When I'm a kid, I'm watching this and go, "This
now
is
we've
the
seen
coolest damn thing
Titanic.
I ever saw."
It's still way
rocket-
better than. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the rocket was stop motion animated on wires against the background when you see it going against the sky, and he also had a neutral density gel, so it's kind of like a grayish filter that would block some of the light that he would put behind the screen, so that as it's going along, you can see the shadow of the rocket.
Wow.
So he took that extra step to really make it blend like it looks part of the scene. Yeah.
I also noticed they had 2 cuts of that, and they used a different sky background in each cut, which I looked at that because I thought, now he came all this way down. It can't be the exact same thing over again, and it wasn't. He's changed it back, so you could. And I love that thing. I mean, these little things, it's like the oxygen destroyer. I mean, this isn't the oxygen destroyer, but this little thing.
This little cylinder.
Who comes up with that? Who made that? It was cool.
And it's convenient that it happened to be just the right size and shape for the gelatin egg that went into it,
and for a kid to be able to pick it up. Such cool stuff. So let's take a look at I think we have the next stage, don't we?
Try to number these. Baby
now we're
Mohr.
talking. Yeah.
That thing totally bought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's
That was
holding
remarkable.
it too. I'm like, what?
Mhm.
What's wrong with you, kid? He opens
I
that
know.
thing and dumps it out.
It's
picks
like,
it up.
this
I'm
is-
like, what?
Have you not seen The Blob? You're lucky you're still alive.
Right. It
Well,
should have
it
eaten
wasn't
him
that,
right
yeah.
there in the cave.
That was such a cool scene. I tried to find a better
Mhm.
shot of the monster coming out, tearing through, and it's like,
Oh,
man, that could not have been easy to animate.
no.
No, he did that. Ralph, go ahead, because I know you can do it better than me.
Well,
Well, I mean, he just said it was cut in half. The creature was laying on the table, so he was animating it from the bottom.
Gotcha. Oh, see, that's so obvious in Dimension.
well, yeah. And he said he had to kind of like animate it with tongs once it was visible. He couldn't
Wow.
reach in there with his
Right,
massive
right.
animator hands. He had to use, little tongs to move the arms and things as it was breaking out.
But that stuff had to be just the right consistency too.
Mhm.
To when you peel it back, that it would stay where it was.
Yeah, it's gelatin, just like
Yeah.
Jello. Yeah,
I know, but still,
but very
Which-
thick. Yeah.
Which, boy, under hot lights and everything, I still don't know how he did
Yeah.
it. But that's one of the things that makes people like Danforth and O'Brien and Harryhausen such masters. It's not just you have this articulated puppet and you move it. You've got to think when something moves, if it starts from one position, moves to the other, the first few frames are not going to be that big. And then as, things don't move at the same rate.
Right.
have
Everything
to
that
know that.
starts, everything that starts and stops, it's got to accelerate into speed and then decelerate at the end of it. So it's small movements, larger movements, smaller movements. Unless
Keeping
it's
that-
like a sword that's striking another sword, then it accelerates and it stops. Yeah.
I mean, keeping that all together in your head and with a
Yeah.
creature that not only has the normal articulations, also a tail. Unnecessary, but he threw that in there because it's just so cool, and it gives
Mhm.
it gives you something that even if the creature is not doing a lot of movement, you can get that tail
yeah.
snaking around.
Yeah,
and
he
that-
was great at that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, he said the creature was inspired by a human torso, and the face has some fish features he felt, and then also reptilian features, so that from the waist down is very much like a dinosaur.
Mhm.
I love the shot on the bottom too. Again,
Yeah.
like Ralph, you were talking about the body acting, the way the creature's rubbing its eyes, and the way it kind of like tries to protect
Yeah.
itself from the light. It's a newborn baby,
Yeah.
It-
Mhm.
you know. Of
It's
course,
amazingly
Mhm.
precocial, though.
Yeah.
yeah.
Even animals
Oh,
that
yeah.
are good to go
Yeah.
on a given day, they can get up and run. Not as soon as they hatch or are born. It takes a little time. But this guy, he was
Wow.
good to go.
I think that tells you something about
was
what it's
born
like to
ready,
live on
this guy.
Venus.
Yeah.
Venus
Yeah.
is probably really
And I think that's
tough.
why
Mhm.
it's really stormy on Venus, so he needed that tail for balance. Hold him up.
Now, speaking of Venus, let's just talk about what it would be like to live on Venus.
Oh my God,
You've got
you gonna do science?
okay, you've got a temperature year round, day and night, that's like 872 degrees. You've got the same atmospheric pressure is equal to the pressure you would feel 3,000 feet underwater.
Hmm.
The atmosphere is almost completely carbon dioxide with some nitrogen, no oxygen, and it's the planet is covered in clouds, and the clouds are what? Sulfuric acid.
Sulfuric acid. And it's basically the same size as Earth. It's like
Yes,
it's like Earth's
It
twin.
is.
And
So- It's hell. This is it. Venus is hell.
Yeah, it's like,
And
honey,
I'm-
this travel brochure, it's not selling me on this Venus trip.
If you die, you go to
and be
you're
careful
bad,
when
go
you
to
buy
Venus.
a 5-day cruise,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
a day on Venus is longer than a year on Venus.
Ah,
Oh yeah. One day in Venus is 243 Earth days.
Right.
Pretty
But
crazy.
a year is 220 some.
There
but
you
you
go.
know, it doesn't matter because you died in the first 1/1,000,000th of a second
Oh, exactly.
on Venus.
Yeah.
So what is
mean,
time
yeah.
from that point
With
on?
that pressure, your lungs would be crushed. You couldn't breathe. Your eardrums would burst, you'd be in serious trouble.
And the emers would come
and it's
devour
872 degrees.
Getting you to Venus, $10 million. You can stay there as long as you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, if it's like that there, just imagine what it would be like to come from that environment that you're adapted for and come to Earth. We think Earth is great, but if your body is set up for that kind of pressure and that kind of heat, and all of a sudden you're in Rome, it's
he should have been cold.
Not the same thing at all.
So maybe his skin is supposed to be smooth, but we're seeing goosebumps.
And then they say that it's the Earth's atmosphere that makes it grow. That they were little on the planet,
oxygen, right?
Earth, which, when I'm thinking about the pressure, I'm like, okay, if you take a deep sea creature and you just bring it right up to the surface and you don't, pressurize the air for it or anything, it's going to pretty much explode. If you've seen pictures of a blobfish, you think that is a funny looking lump of something. If you see a picture of what it's like in the deep, it looks much more like a normal fish. But you bring it up to the surface without this pressure, and it's kind of like a person in a vacuum. They're going to explode. So I can see how he could get bigger, but I would think it would hurt a whole lot.
Well, I look at this movie so differently now. So, for instance, when they put him in the cage, and the next time, and then it's covered with that tarp. Then when it breaks out of the cage, it's like almost the size of a man, not quite, but it's growing a lot from that, size of that lower picture. Then it becomes, I could see a little bit of the jerkiness, but I also realize that how hard is it to animate that tarp thing and get it on the day where it's supposed to be? That's the stuff that I think would be. It's amazing to me that he would even tackle that. That it'd be hard enough to do the breaking out of the bars. You got all these different bars that got to be bent a certain amount, whatever. But then that tarp wrinkling and
I feel like Harryhausen was always trying to challenge himself, because a lot of the things that he does are almost unnecessarily complicated. And people don't appreciate it because they don't know what it takes to lasso a dinosaur and try to match up real ropes with fake ropes. I still can't believe that's how he did it. It does seem really crazy, but I guess that was his challenge.
And think about the eye lines on that picture in the bottom with this little creature crawling across the desk, walking back and forth. And both these people who are right close up to it have to have their eyes looking exactly where that creature is. So in rehearsals, they would always do a rehearsal. And in this case, there was a rehearsal where Harryhausen was holding a model, who was holding the model in his hands and moving it across the table, and they would time it out so that they would then do exactly what he told them to do. And of course, then he animates to the way their eyes are looking, so it's perfect. But to get them to be looking at the same thing and at the right timing, that's what he did in this case. Have the little model on the table and move it back and forth.
And that bottom shot, that scene reminded me of the scene in Guanji with the little horse. There's people looking at that little horse on a table.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the homunculus in Golden Voyage of Sinbad,
right,
which has something like a birth scene itself, as being brought to life from mandrake root.
It's just, I almost can't imagine it, because I know that he is like sitting in this room with this tabletop and these gauges and stuff and slightly moving it, and he's got the camera set and he's taking pictures, and he does that just over and over and over, and then puts it together in this. I just can't see how that can be done.
It's
so good.
It's astonishing.
Anyway.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's just exhausting.
I'm exhausted. All right. I really like this farm scenes too.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorite Harryhausen scenes.
But even before the barn, you see these horses running off. You see these sheep there, And
Mhm.
there's this little lamb, and he walks right up to it. Does he attack the lamb? No.
Nope.
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 He's just looking at it, and he walks on
Mhm.
by.
Well, they
Mhm.
kinda make
He's not a monster who's
No.
out for blood.
It's
Mhm.
not until the soldiers that,
Mhm.
well, there's some people get killed.
Well, there's the dog
The
attacks
car
him.
and that stuff, but he
Yeah.
doesn't kill the dog. The dog's
No.
not dead, and neither is the farmer.
Who deserves it?
Yeah. Should have been dead.
These are great. Those are great shots.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I think you get more into it then.
It's also got something that's a little rare for Harryhausen. Harryhausen was not big on animating the camera. He does it occasionally. O'Brien and Pete Peterson did it a lot in like Giant Behemoth and Black Scorpion. But there's a scene where
King Kong.
where the Emer is coming toward us and it's like the camera is tracking him, and it's very effective. I kind of wish Harryhausen had done it more, but of course animating the camera on top of everything else is just one more nightmare.
Well, in the case of the Emer walking towards you, coming out of the darkness, which was really effective, the live action they shot had the camera tracking backwards.
Right, you're right.
And then he didn't have it walking on a treadmill. He actually did have the Emer walking forward on his little stage. So you have this combination of the background receding because the camera was pulling back on the projected background with the Emer walking forward.
So it gave the illusion of camera movement.
And
Okay,
you got to keep the perspective right? Keep it the right size in relation to the that middle. So the top shot for people that are maybe listening to this are bags of sulfur the farmer has, and he's getting ready to rip that open and chow down a little bit. The middle shot is one of my favorite parts, when there is a stop motion animation fight between the Emer and the farmer, which I think is just absolutely amazing.
You like when people abuse these animals, don't you, Jeff?
No, I didn't like it when he stabbed him with a pitchfork. I'm just thinking of it in terms of the technical part where I mean, I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, I didn't get that was a stop motion thing on the type of TV that I was looking at, because that man, I'm not kidding, the man is not, that's pretty real.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His motions, and he cleverly does it in such a way that most of the time his arms are up here and kind of covered, but there's one part where you can see his face pretty well, and it's not bad. It's
so you're talking about a miniature animated man when that man who had the pitchfork is being is fighting with the Emer.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying the man I didn't like when he stuck him in terms of a move by a character, not the way the shot was done. The middle one, I love the way that whole scene plays out, that fight with him on the ground.
Right. So William Popper's
and then William Popper's clubbing him, hitting him with a shovel too.
And has to know, you got it when you do this, you got to stop that shovel at a certain point so that it looks like it's actually hitting the creature that isn't there when you're doing this. And you're just thanking God that you got Ray Harryhausen as opposed to the poor people who got the giant claw, whoever did those effects.
And in the bottom, you see that's still in the barn. And those people are like moving this sort of wooden cage piece about. And Ray Harryhausen mentioned that it was challenging because as that's moving and the light's coming through those pieces of the wooden bars of that cage door, that he had to match the lighting. He had to put throw shadows on the creature of these moving elements that the light is playing through, so that the shadows would match what you saw. His work with lighting to match what's in the live action is just exceptional.
And again, look at how different it is now. You do something like this in After Effects on your computer, and you can immediately see if it works or doesn't. Whereas back then, you had to do it, develop it, look at the results, and say, that did not come out the way I wanted.
Yeah, not only that, but people will make a movie now, and in post, they'll be able to go into a studio where they say, we should have had this light over here be a yellow light. And then they say, okay, we'll fix that. They play with their computer. We should have had a light over here in the corner. Oh, well, let's put one there. It's like,
Yeah.
Wow, how can they do? Whereas in the past, the best you could do once the film is all shot is timing. That is, make it a little lighter, a little darker, change the overall cast of the whole scene. And now there are so many tools available that we're not around.
This has probably encouraged them to maybe not do the pre-production planning that they did back in those days, and that has become a problem.
Well, yes. So in that bottom shot, I'm thinking that Dr. Uhl has his hands on the gate, and I could tell I'm going, not yet. No, he tries to close the gate too soon, and he pisses the thing off, and it runs out of the barn eventually. Like, a nice plan.
Nobody listens.
Yeah, after this creature had broken out, bent the bars of this little cage it was in when it was smaller, now they're going to put it into a wooden cage because that's going to work.
That's a plan.
So I have to mention Frank Puglia, who played Dr. Leonardo.
Oh, yeah.
All right. The guy that had the house following the car like a goat.
All right.
Anyway, not a big thing about it, but he was in The Man Who Laughs, 1928.
Conrad Veidt.
Wow.
And also The Phantom of the Opera, 1943 version of that. So quite a career. I didn't get a chance to look at everything. And I did want to mention that Dr. Uhl, who was the other doctor that was involved the whole time with the general. John Zaremba, 181 credits. The Magnetic Monster, Earth versus Flying Saucers.
Yay.
The Night the World Exploded, which is directed by Fred Sears, which we are doing his movie The Werewolf after Daphne's next pick. 0 Hour, which I think is the funniest serious movie I've ever seen. And if you haven't seen that, you should go watch it. It's what the original, what was the Airplane, the spoof? It's what that was based on.
Yeah, it was the template for that movie.
Yeah,
that's right.
Even though they were serious. Frankenstein's Daughter, 7 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, 4 episodes of the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, 30 episodes of The Time Tunnel. He was a scientist on The Time Tunnel. And an episode of Columbo, where he plays the coroner.
Okay.
Anyway, and I didn't look the other guys up. I wish I would have, because I recognized him, Tito Vualo and John Arvon. And Arthur Space is the other one I wanted to mention. I don't know if you guys recognize him or not. He's the one that played the doctor that was killed, laid in the bed, and
okay.
He has 288 credits. And I didn't have time to look for it, but look through his whole thing. But he was in The Swarm, so he's got that going for him.
Lucky him.
Many moons later. And episodes of $6 Million Man, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I know he was in other stuff. Voices at the Bottom of the Sea. Perry Mason. Oh, no.
Who wasn't? Yeah.
Oh, you know what? 43 episodes of Lassie. He was Doc Weaver. 58 episodes of National Velvet. Holy cow. He got in on some stuff. I knew I'd recognize him from some old, as Christopher Moore would say, old-timey TV shows. Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. So, okay. I just wanted to bring him up because he is so recognizable and in so many different things, and he has such a small part here. And it's hard to recognize him because he's got crud all over his face from his whatever sulfur eating his skin, I guess.
And that whole scene, just so much touching of his face in the scene, and I was like, well, it was just like, well, it's not clean.
This
it's
unknown disease. I wonder.
This unknown disease that everybody on my ship died from. I'm going to touch it now and go, oh, yeah.
No quarantine procedures whatsoever.
All right. Let's see. The Emer escapes.
So just to back up a bit, the barn scene, which is certainly one of the most atmospheric and effective sequences in the movie. You'll recall that you see the dog getting beaten by the emer in shadow.
Yeah.
Because Harryhausen had made the model of this dog, and it was the right scale and everything, but the hair was just sculpted, and it just didn't look good enough. Didn't look enough like it wouldn't pass for a real dog in the movie. So he opted instead to show it in shadow as it's being punched by this emer, and I think that was not just. I mean, it was kind of a happy accident because it's I think much more effective that way than showing everything.
Did he use a model? Well, no, you said it did.
He did use a model. He did have the dog model.
Well, I mean,
you see glimpses of it, but mostly you just see it in shadow.
Well, when the dog is lying there after this whole thing has happened,
you
see it in the background. I could see that it was breathing, but it was breathing like a panting breathing, and I wondered. My first thought was, how did they get the dog to do that? And then I thought, well, maybe that was animated somehow.
No, that was the dog. That was the real dog.
Give a dog enough sausages, you can train him to do just about anything.
It was probably really hot in that barn.
Probably. All right, moving on. Now we have the emer escapes, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the minute you see this crane go, and you're going, oh,
Jeez.
these idiots are going to.
Yeah, and let's have this creature like in a zoo, just at a very public, busy zoo. We'll just store them there.
What's the worst that could happen,
I
Daphne?
know.
Come on.
I know. And then when that happens, it's like it's animal. It can kill hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and it's like, yeah. So let's just have them in the zoo.
I love how Harryhausen shows, street carnage here. He takes out that street lamp. And again, that's another thing. Most people be like, oh God, now I got to animate this street lamp. And then he kicks over a fire hydrant. I got to animate that.
Well, he's got a guy in his hand too, who's flailing around.
Yeah.
Harryhausen's just rubbing his hands together. We're going to knock down columns and it's going to break into 17 pieces. And I'm going to animate every one of them.
When he breaks up through the bridge too, I swear there was re-rod in the pieces of the bridge.
Yeah, it looked pretty good.
Oh, like rebar.
Yeah. Reinforcement.
Wow.
And we call that re-rod.
Okay.
I'm serious.
Yeah,
it's rebar.
And of course all those miniature pieces of the bridge or the columns when they're falling, he has to animate that, so he has to have wires connecting the pieces together. It's a lot more to animate.
And that sort of thing's tricky too, because nobody really knows what an emer looks like when it moves, but we all know what concrete looks like when it falls. We're familiar with gravity.
Yeah.
And that's the thing in stop motion that's the trickiest is stuff like hair, water, fire, and falling things, because we've all seen that. You can fake a lot of stuff. I don't know what a centaur actually moves, but this stuff I know, and if it doesn't fall at the right speed, it looks fake.
Yeah. Well, I too, when he does the bridge, first he breaks out part of it, but then there's a place where he just kind of heaves the whole thing up and over, which I thought was awesome, and it comes into the camera. I thought that was that was an interesting shot.
That was a great scene. You see all the brickwork and everything.
There's brickwork. All right, and then we have
the elephant.
The elephant.
Now, you did see the thing, Bill. You commented about the size of the elephant. Harryhausen said he wanted a 15-foot elephant, but they couldn't get one for him. So instead, they gave him a 4'6" handler to make it look bigger.
Perfect solution.
Yes,
I love it.
That's brilliant.
I'm not actually sure that the biggest elephants left on Earth are 15 feet tall.
I don't know.
That seems really tall.
In particular, this is an Indian elephant. It's the African elephants that are the largest.
Yeah.
This
it's got the
quite large for an Indian elephant.
And of course, he would go to this well again with Guanji fighting an elephant as well.
Yeah, and the idea of using a small person to make the elephant look bigger reminds me of the use of a small person in the shark cage in Jaws, where there's a real shark that's coming at it. And so by using a little person, they could make it look like it was this giant shark.
Mhm.
The largest elephant ever recorded was an African savanna elephant, was 13 feet tall at the shoulder.
Mm.
Now,
So,
might be.
so
15
Ray, you
feet
were never
tall,
going to
but,
get this 15-foot elephant.
No, not as an Indian elephant.
But I do
anyway.
like the fight that the middle shot where we
Mhm.
see the emir is biting.
Mhm.
For some
Yeah,
reason,
yeah.
this just felt right to me that these are animals fighting like animals, because too often, even like Willis O'Brien and stuff in Son of Kong, they're boxing, and the animals are fighting the way humans would. The one thing I really like about the emir is that he's always just an animal.
Mhm.
There's an intelligence there, but it's an animal intelligence. He's fighting the way he would. Why wouldn't he bite? He's got big teeth.
This is exactly. I've been watching videos. I'm on some channel that I've been flipping through of predators in Africa, and frequently what they do is the lions, which is a big. I didn't realize how much bigger they were than like leopards, but they grab a hold of that animal and get a chomp on them, usually around their neck, sometimes their haunch, and they don't let go.
No.
And they use their claws to kind of pull themselves up and get leverage to try to pull them down.
Mm.
And they just keep that clamp on their throat no matter what. So that kind of thing
Suffocation.
looks real. And
Mhm.
I saw one where the lion had its mouth shut over the mouth of a wildebeest
Mm.
and wouldn't let go. And so I don't know how they learn or if that's instinct, but that's a very common thing in those videos on how, the actual circle of life is happening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with the wildebeest, because you think, well, what good are those horns that are up on the head that are curved together like that? The points aren't sticking out like a triceratops or a rhino or something, but actually, once a wildebeest lowers its head and hooks you with one of those horns, it then thrashes its head back and forth. So you're alternating between getting skewered by
You're
one
being
horn
stabbed
and the
over
other.
and
Well,
over
you
again.
can't get off of them. I mean, I saw one with a water buffalo who have real tight curl
There we
on
go.
their
Yeah.
horns.
Yeah.
And they had got that thing hooked through a lion's haunch, and man, it's just the lion ain't getting off of that.
Nope.
Anyway,
Mm.
enough of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was
Animal
kind of
footage.
realistic, it seemed like. We even have people. There's a guy running across the screen.
Yeah.
He's animated, yeah.
And lots of people getting squished.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
like.
it was cool when the elephant falls over on the car.
Yeah.
Too. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And this was shot in front of the Borghese Gallery in Rome. Yeah.
Anyway, great stuff. Well,
Yeah.
what about I don't know, Bill? Do we have anything with the Coliseum?
Yeah, I thought I put these. I thought I numbered these. Did I
You
forget
did.
to number?
You did.
Oh,
I'm working my way through.
uh,
That's the last. Oh no, there's an Emer Last Stand. Okay, Fate of the Emer. Well, let's see.
yeah.
What was the thing you're doing with here?
Well,
the Cyclops.
this is sad, but it was necessary. Making the armatures is one of the biggest expenses and difficulty in doing stop motion. So to make it possible to make these movies, Ray Harryhausen felt it necessary to recycle his armatures, which necessitates stripping all the foam rubber and everything off of the creatures, basically destroying it so that he could reuse it. There were two, a 12-inch Emer armature and a 8 or 9-inch one, and they were used to make two of the three Cyclops.
Actually, you can see it's a 12-inch and a 6-inch.
Oh, 6-inch! Wow, even
Yeah.
smaller.
Yeah.
But now he did. I know he made a plaster cast of the Emer before he did that, before he took it apart. And I'm sure it hurt to do that. And of course, knowing what we know now, that these would become so iconic, I'm sure an effort would have been made to preserve them. But although preserving foam rubber creatures is doomed, we have bits and pieces, even going as far back as King Kong, and they are just disintegrating. A lot of them ended up in Forey Ackerman's home, and they just rot. They just rot away. It's organic material. It is not meant to last. They'd have to be preserved like Lenin, stuck in a glass tube with poison gas or something.
I think we're really lucky that there were molds and castings that could be made for this creature. Yeah. So his dad's making the armatures, but it still takes time and money. So,
And then
so the only new armature for the Cyclops was.
I'm sure there's a reason the woman screaming out the window pertains to this slide.
Because that's my reaction to discovering that he had to tear apart all these creatures. They should be in the Louvre right next to the Mona Lisa.
I love that top shot with the Cyclops has his arm around.
Yeah.
Yeah, little buddy.
Yeah.
Brother from another mother.
Kind of cute. And then we also have The Last Stand.
Oh, yes.
And that is another thing that made me love this movie, because it was on a real thing, and they really got to shoot there, right?
They really did.
Which is amazing. They got to run around the Coliseum. When they're showing people running around the Coliseum, they're running around the Coliseum.
They are. Yeah.
They never get to do that now, I'm sure.
Well, especially after what happened in this movie.
What happened?
Well, okay, Italy was extremely cooperative. They provided the soldiers, they provided the tanks for this movie. You know, very nice of them. There hadn't been many films shot in Italy, American films. And so they had this cooperation. But all the pavement surrounding the Colosseum was recently set down tarmac, which is a tar-based pavement, and it was a very hot day, and you've got these massive tank treads running over it, and they ripped up the street all around the Coliseum.
Oh boy!
And so the producer Charles Schneer was not very happy when he got stuck with the bill for repairing those streets.
I think if you know that, you can see some shots where
you can.
It's not obvious, but you can see like gouge.
You can see the big track running around the Coliseum.
Yep, he threw some big chunks down on people too.
Should have had Ray just animate a few toy tanks.
And that bottom shot, the death pose, is kind of reminiscent of King Kong, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I guess laying on its back, but
and you know they don't spike the football. I mean, he had to be killed for one thing. He was just growing too big and everything. But this is not an explicit one. It's not something like they make today. And like, I wonder who the real monsters are. Us, you know, it's unfortunate. Everything is unfortunate. It's sad that it happened this way. He was just another living thing.
Well, they do have that. They do have that conflict between once he's attacks in the farm and attacks the farmer and the dog.
I blame the dog. The dog started it.
Yeah,
they'll do that.
The local official says, "Okay, no more cooperation. You know, I'm acting to save my village. We're going after this thing." Yeah, and the Americans are still fighting to preserve the science and study the creature and all this other stuff, and which would again be a great life. Let's take it out of its world and take it 20 million miles, which is approximately the nearest distance. I think what did that look? 24 million?
About 23 million.
Yeah, 24 is as close as we get, and then
nobody in these movies ever says, like, listen, if we could catch this thing alive and put him in the zoo, replacing our now dead elephant, we are going to make a mint.
No, they don't. Nobody says that.
I will hop on a plane right now to go see that thing.
That's the King Kong approach.
Right, yeah. See, that's American, that's capitalism right there.
Some of those shots, though, I thought were just great in the Coliseum, the perspective and stuff. Just a couple of them look, you know, there are times where you can see that the background is a rear projection, but it's, again, I'm thinking, I barely notice it now because, you know, in the distance, it might be out of focus anyway. Yeah. I know I didn't notice it when I watched it when I was a kid, you know, and that size and resolution of a TV screen.
And of course, the symbolism of a creature at the Colosseum where men fought to the death, whether it's Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris or an Emer versus American tanks. That's just cool.
Well, and it's one of the wonders of the ancient world, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
It's still around, one you can see.
Oh Lord,
worse
any
for wear.
any
We've
final
been talking
comments?
for a long time. haven't
This
we?
will easily. I think this is going to end up being our longest episode or close. But that's
Go for the
okay.
record. We can do this.
That's okay.
You
That's
picked a
probably why
Harryhausen
Doc
movie.
Ray
and Cat all of a
Harryhausen.
sudden
Yeah.
have conflict.
You had
Yeah.
Ralph and me here. What chances do we have?
Yeah.
Oh, and I love it just
That's
as much,
awesome.
so yeah. Any final comments from anybody?
It's great. It'll
Mhm.
hold up forever. It's timeless. Some movies show their age real fast, and obviously this is a movie of its time, but it will always be worth watching.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is a film where it was really Harryhausen's idea, his concept. He did the illustrations that were just amazing, and the little story. He was the spark that started this whole thing going. And from here on, many of the films that he did were all started in his imagination. And this was the last of the black and white films he did. Also the last, except for First Men in the Moon, the last that you'd really call science fiction as opposed to fantasy. He really, he'd already done this was his fourth black and white science fiction film. And he was looking forward to something completely different, which was where he moved into Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, which came out the following year. It's a very fast turnaround. It's also a film that has one creature that you see the whole arc of this creature from a helpless baby to this towering monster, and you see why it is fighting. There's always motivation. It doesn't just knock down buildings because they're there.
Right, right.
It's all motivated
Right.
and brilliantly animated. And
It is. He starts
beautiful.
off. He's just looking for sulfur.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
he
just wants
goes to
some
the
sulfur.
farm, and then he goes to the sulfur pits, and
Yeah, I had to look it up because I was like, why are there all these bags of sulfur on
Yes,
this
why?
barn? Yeah, but it's because it's actually used as fertilizer and also
Oh.
a fungicide. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a farm boy, so I didn't know that.
we got to get rid of those fungi.
Yeah, sulfur's a little bit of sulfur if you want to plant blueberry bushes.
Yeah, and I think some of the setups and the set pieces, especially the barn scene or the Emer as it's first breaking out of its gelatin egg are really some of the best things that you'll ever see out of his movies. The lighting and the drama, it's just really remarkable filmmaking, I think.
I don't know as much as you guys know about Harryhausen, and I haven't seen all of his movies, but the ones that I have, I feel like this one, sometimes I would get distracted maybe by the jerkiness of some of the movements or something like that. It was very clearly, that type of animation, but something about this just felt very real and smooth moving,
Right.
and natural, and which really made it easier for me to empathize with this creature. And
Yeah.
that's why I said it was like there was like heart to this creature, and that was because of its movements and everything that Harryhausen did with it. And I just think that's really cool.
I agree.
Yeah, Harryhausen is so intuitive. I mean, he wouldn't like plot out everything unless there was some close interaction, like a sword fighting
Right.
warrior or something. He would just start and just keep going and going until he was done. He didn't like plan out every little movement or time everything. He might time something like how long does it take something to fall down or to move your arm or something, but it's just remarkable. He had done it so much. Nobody else has produced the massive amount of stop motion as this man, largely thanks to Charles Shear, but he was also the right guy for the job because he could really churn them out fast, but with a high enough quality that when people went to see these films, nobody came away disappointed. They're always like, wow, that was amazing. And so he had a string of successes, and one film after another was really doing well. until maybe, I guess, let's see, Valley of Guanchi didn't do so well. But,
Guanchi.
on the whole, he's quite a success story. And
Mhm.
he just really understands how things move, how to put character into them, and drama. There's so much drama in the way these things work. The director of Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Eugene Lourier, said that all of Ray Harryhausen's creatures die like a tenor in an Italian opera. It's so big, it's so
Right.
so powerful.
Something else I really love about just talking with you guys about it is being able to get into talking about it so that you can really appreciate really all the work, the actual the technical craftsmanship, but also the art of it, to really appreciate how magnificent it was that he could do these things. What you were saying, Bill, about how things that we're used to looking at, making them look realistic. His understanding of movement, whether it's a human or an animal or a fantasy animal. And then even like little things like the tarp over the cage, thinking to do that with a believable movement. I mean, I love how we can talk about these things enough and with detail to really appreciate them, because they should be appreciated.
Yeah, things you might not think about, like when they drop that wire mesh net over him, or cable mesh net or something. It was actually a net material that he bought at a hardware store, but then he spray painted it silver so it looked like something that could be used to electrocute the animal. And he did put some copper wires into it itself, so it would be a little bit more malleable. But everything looks as it should look. There are things that are more obvious, like when blocks are falling, or a building is busting apart. It's much easier to do that as a slow motion miniature that blows up, but he didn't have those resources, and he just didn't let that stop him. He was quite fearless in what he attempted and succeeded in doing.
So if you haven't seen this, it's available to stream right now from our Play Now Media partners on Wicked Horror TV, Classic Horror Movie Channel, and the Classic Sci-Fi Movie Channel. It's also available on Hoopla, one of the channels you can access with a public library card, and Tubi. And I was looking, I have I've got the 50th anniversary Blu-ray, which is, you can still find out there. And I also have this one that's got 20 million miles to Earth, and it came from beneath the sea on it from Mill Creek, but it doesn't look to me like it's available anymore. It doesn't say in stock or anything. So
right, it has 4 movies, and those are 2 of them, right?
It just has 2.
Oh, okay. I think there's maybe one that has.
Well, I don't know. There's a Ray Harryhausen collection. There's a bunch of different ones on here. Yeah. And some imports too, depending on if you've got a player that can do those. So anyway, I think we need to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys can we do feedback? There's not too many of them.
Sure.
I can talk fast.
Let's do some feedback.
Okay. All right. So thanks you guys for all of this. So
thank you.
The first
Thanks
feedback, Daphne. So we had a guy when we did Vampiri, I'm sorry, named John Fowler, that said he loved Gothic European horror flicks, and he was looking for trying to get one of my kids who's 11 into classic Euro horror films. So things beyond Hammer, this might be ideal. Thoughts for starting off kids on Euro Gothic. So Bill can pipe in too, anything he can think of. But Robert Baker replied, Daphne, you want to read that one?
Sure. Robert Baker says, I guess it would depend on the kids in question, but I think Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill might be a good one. Maybe Castle of Blood. Both are basically ghost stories that aren't too graphic in content. Also possibly Crypt of the Vampire and Castle of the Living Dead. Both of those are black and white Italian, Christopher Lee flicks from the 60s that I don't recall being too graphic either. Yeah, I think I agree with the Kill Baby. I think that was the first thing that popped in my head. Was Kill Baby Kill.
You did say that.
Yeah. Any other ideas? Those are good.
I'll think on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Bava, but too graphic for little kids.
Yeah.
See, my problem is I don't remember that stuff. I showed my grandson Eli, who was on one of our 70s episodes once. When he was, I think, 11, we watched Insidious. And my thought was, I remember thinking, well, I don't think there's any sex or swearing or not a lot of bloodshed. It'll be okay. Scared the living daylights out.
Yep.
He was hugging his mom the whole time, and when we got done, I said, well, that was a mistake. No, that was the best movie.
Yay!
So anyway.
Eli.
Nice.
Okay, thanks, Robert. We appreciate your contribution. And anybody else
Yeah.
who thinks of some good Euro Gothic horror or Gothic Euro horror, whatever the proper sequence of those is, give us a shout out. Let's see. Bill, episode 182, The Gorilla.
Also from Robert Baker. He
Yep.
says, fun movie. I had never seen it before. Guess after King Kong, filmmakers were trying to cash in on the gorilla thing. Seems like gorillas were all over the place for a while. Yep.
A fun movie might be a stretch, but you know,
Did have gorillas.
its main feature is the Rich Brothers, Patsy Kelly, and Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I ordered a DVD collection of the Thelma Todd and Patsy Kelly shorts.
Ah, cool.
And I just got a notice it's supposed to arrive tomorrow, so I can't wait to check that out. All right, and The Raven, episode 183 from Jose. Ralph, can you see that one?
Oh, yeah, sure. I really enjoy the Corman Poe cycle. Every year I rewatch all the films on those 3 Vincent Price Blu-ray collection discs for Halloween. And that rotation is coming up soon. Expect to be tagged in FB. There's so much good stuff there.
Wow.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
I just made this guy. He's made of cardboard.
That's incredible.
That's
Jeez.
awesome, Ralph.
So
Thank
that's
you.
that's
We should
the guy
have him
from,
host
Vader's
one day.
Mars Attacks, or what is that? Is there a model? Is that modeled after a certain?
Oh, this? Oh,
Yeah.
not especially, though. It's it's got a little bit of Invasion of the Saucer Man, I suppose. I don't
Does
know.
he have a name?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, well, give him a
you're
name.
a writer. Come up with something, Bill.
Make him a guest host one day. That'd be great.
Yeah,
I love
Well,
it. That's so great.
I'm going to use him in my bad movie night meetups. He'll be making comments and jokes.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
cool.
Yeah. That would be our most downloaded episode.
Indeed.
That was a fun surprise. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also on The Raven from 183, episode 183, The Raven, Gregory Crosby. Daphne, take that one.
All right. Gregory Crosby says, an absolute stone cold classic. Something I so appreciate about Corman's work in the 60s is his range. Even with his insistence on doing things quickly and on the cheap, he could still turn out something as wonderfully comic and entertaining as The Raven, and then turn around and make something as richly creepy and disturbing as The Mask of the Red Dead.
Yes.
Yeah, that is it.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
think
keeper.
one of Corman's superpowers, in addition to finding great talent and giving it a chance, was casting. Can you imagine any other actors of the era in these parts? So much fun. Also, I laughed aloud at Jeff's literary analysis on Poe's poem. It's just a guy freaking himself out. Bravo, Jeff. And if you had been a true nerd like me, you would have memorized Ulalume. Another party trick that no one found impressive, except for the one goth girl who already had a boyfriend.
Yep.
Yes, I said how I
They
had.
usually do.
I memorized the Raven when I was like 20 or 21 or something, and I never found a single person that was impressed with that.
Oh,
Aw.
I would have been impressed, Jeff.
Yes.
And I think what I actually said was, it's just a guy sitting alone in a room freaking himself out. Anyway.
Well,
All right.
what I find interesting about the Raven, among other things, is that you can take the Gilbert and Sullivan song from HMS Pinafore, Never Mind the Whys and Wherefores, and you can sing the Raven to that song.
Oh.
It's got the same meter.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, you're going to demonstrate with
Oh, I could try.
Mr. Blue?
Mr. Blue. Let's see. Okay. There we go. All right. Never mind the what. Oh, wait. That's the wrong song. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly came a tapping as of someone gently rapping on my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and a separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor of the maiden named Lenore. Quoth the raven nevermore. Of the maiden named Lenore, quoth the raven nevermore.
Yes.
Bravo.
I don't know. How did you manage to make that creation that it could go invisible too?
Well, he's like Predator.
Yes, he is. He's
I
Predator.
know. I thought if I made it kind of blue,
Yeah.
it wouldn't disappear against the green screen, but
No.
sometimes it doesn't behave itself.
The better to
It's-
conquer your world, human.
It's kind of a teal, so
I'm really
it's-
impressed with what that looks like
Yeah,
and how well
yeah,
it's standing
that's
up. by
awesome.
manipulating it.
Cardboard.
That is so awesome.
If I made something like that, it would have fallen apart in pieces by now, and it wouldn't look like that to begin with. Anyway.
Mine would look like a cardboard box with two ping pong ball eyes.
Well, that's what the robot puppet's going to look like.
Give me a box and put it on my head. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Jose, Gregory, Robert, and hopefully John Fowler will hear this. I'll try to remember to put this comment back under his comment for Evampiri. Everybody, we love your comments, so please make comments on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube page, or you can send them to feedback@gruesomemagazine.com, or you can go to our Facebook group, Gruesome Magazine's H&R and DOH Podcast Facebook group, and make comments. That's it for this episode, but every 2 weeks we'll be focusing on a specific film released between 1920 and 1969. Next up is one chosen by Daphne. What are we doing, Daphne?
We are doing Lake of the Dead from 1958.
Excellent. Norwegian folk horror, I
Norwegian
think.
folk horror.
Yeah.
And
This will be a new one to a lot of people. So that's
it
cool.
will be. It will be. And it's in the Severn box set of folk horror, which I can never remember the title, but it's in there. And it's on Shudder if you want to go check it out.
Excellent.
And there was a movie that came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago that was based on this or inspired by this. That was somewhat similar. This is considered a classic and an entry point, I think, to horror in Norway, possibly. Okay, I'm looking forward to that. Yippee-ki-yay. What do we do now? Let me see. Yeah. Catch us again here in 2 weeks for another great horror movie, the classic era, as only decades of horror can do it. Thank you so much, Bill and Ralph.
Thanks for having us
Daphne.
on.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Once again, if it wasn't for you guys, I'd just be sitting here talking to my imaginary voices in my head. Right? It wouldn't end well. So thank you all very much. Say good night, everybody.
Good night,
folks.
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Gruesome Magazine.